Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to F.E.A.R 2. Let's continue. Wasn't a very long level the last time, and we're now going to try and save Lieutenant Stokes. See, I think that was the bad guys that we just overheard. We still very much are in a situation where we just have no real reason to not fire immediately on everybody. And I'm still having to pull myself out of the slow mode when, frankly, I would have kind of liked the game to do it itself. Interesting that I was too close to that grenade, but I can't really do anything about it, so yep. It feels like it should either pull you out of slow mode, like almost immediately if you don't see something in front of you, and then or you should have to get pulled out of slow mode the second you kill one person, so it's only good for like one hit. I wonder if these bullet patterns are bullets that I put there. Let's do a little experiment here. Alright, so let's stand a little back. I guess it would make sense that with the mouse controls, I would probably very horizontally move left and right and very vertically moved up and down to the point where I might just accidentally make a T pattern as I'm trying to shoot the enemies in front of the wall. Here's a place where A, bumping into it knocks it over, and B, like the only way to get cover is from the back side of that, which makes that fairly useless. The last level was a lot of fighting of different characters, but I wouldn't be surprised if we are kind of just at the end of the game. The hour is coming. Let's see, serial killer on the loose. Yeah, the idea of a serial killer being on the loose is interesting, but that almost feels like that is a advertisement for Condemned Criminal Origins, which I feel like that is what Monolith did, is that they kind of lost interest in the F.E.A.R series as things kept going forward. So we see her, she's still alive. We assume that's the case. We haven't seen Alma directly in a while. Here we have a wooden door that feels like you could probably just blow it up.
Please hurry, Becket.
Oh, there's a door over here. They didn't make that as easy to see as possible. Is this a joke about wheelchair? Area for evacuation assistance. Use the intercom to contact emergency officials. So if you're in a wheelchair, you're just screwed because you're not coming up these fire stairs. Which, honestly, I guess that is true for probably a lot of buildings, is that there is probably a lack of support for safety there. Alright. I'm about to get shot. I'm gonna switch over to a napalm gun and switch over to the sniper rifle, and then try to zoom in over here. Seems like it is only one zoom. Still, we saw a laser beam, but it clearly didn't see me. So he's back down there. Alright. It says zoom times 10, so I kind of feel like there might be a different zoom button, but I have no idea what it would be. Come on. Like, we did have a whole sequence like this in the first game, and it was...
I got another one. You see him?
No.
Shit, that was close. Just a few more, Becket. Stay tight.
Like, they are showing up fairly inconsistently. It seems like any shot pretty much at all anywhere will kill them. So your sniper rifle is probably as deadly as alright. And see, they gotta get kind of away from the sniper stuff fairly quickly there, because that's just not gonna work. Like, it would be nice if you could have sniper missions just go on in a lot of the previous missions, but that only works if you have like co-op. There's our APC guy. Alright. So that's not our armored personnel carrier. It's someone else's. Alright, well. Aim, get it red, and then return fire. Seriously?
Did it! The turret's neutralized. Damn it! They're swarming the area. I have to move. I can't stay here. Keep heading for the rendezvous. We'll link up there. And be careful.
We've got people all over the place, but I don't know if I can actually hit them all. It's just a little too hard to aim at all these people. Alright, let's get back to assault rifle, because I think we are now stuck just rushing, and we'll probably trigger some more things. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some ghost stuff, but also I wouldn't be surprised if the Alma ghost stuff only shows up when we are not near any of our companions, because maybe I'm hallucinating all of that, or maybe Alma only comes after me when I'm feeling particularly vulnerable and exposed. There's a lot of stuff down there. Yeah, I definitely get the feeling that you could have had a multiplayer co-op experience here, and that would have been the next generation of an idea for a game like this for first-person shooters, is to have everything have co-op, even if it really didn't work as co-op. And honestly, this would have been kind of a great example. Kind of like, we've got music playing, but I don't see any enemies at all. So I'm just like wasting my, like, somebody's shooting at me obviously, but I feel like we're in a situation where we should probably have a better system as far as grenade use. Like, because it does kind of feel like you should have just as many grenades as you could possibly have reloads in your gun. That way it all locks up and lines up quite nicely. Where is he? Somewhere over here. He's somewhere over there. But me getting shot with a sniper rifle shot took out like half my health. And that's no good. That is totally not gonna work. Oh man, could I literally have jumped over this? I could have. So I took the long way around. I feel like I should use the health kit, but if I use the health kit, we could be in a dangerous position. And I'm just wandering around looking for an occasional health bullet increase. Okay. Do we see a whole bunch of people? Here we go. Let's use a health kit before we die. Don't know if I'm supposed to be going down this way. I think maybe I am. There's nothing up this way. So you might trigger less continuous respawns if you reach a certain level. So just getting from point A to point B might be beneficial. Then I think we are kind of barred from going on the other side of this fence. Which, okay. Yeah, they've rammed this APC in this way to block that. So I don't think that there's really anything else to find. Although, I also wouldn't be surprised if there were a gun here or there that I'd managed to not walk over and pick up bullets. Then we're going back to another checkpoint. Yeah, we've got the rats. Still trying our best to figure out if we can go any further. Here you have like a skeleton in this cage and an indication that they may have kept the rats in the cage and fed it human remains to it, which is creepy, but I don't think it really connects to a larger aspect. Like, frankly, if the rats are supposed to be anything more than, oh, I bet a certain percentage of people are going to be afraid of seeing rats in the game, I'd be surprised. I feel like there were a lot of dead birds and rats in condemned criminal origin, but since that they just learned a lot of lessons from this game when they hit and made condemned criminal origin, where this game continuously fails to be scary because of the fact that you have guns. Like, unless you are going to decide to make the guns completely useless in certain scenes against against the spooky characters in the story, I don't know how you fix that either. I think we may be hitting the school, and that's where we were going. This is maybe where we start to see some of the more of the backstory of. Man, I just cannot hit that. Harrier Home Finance. If this is somehow connected to school and not just in laundry, I'd be surprised. Remember, we did see one of these laundry machines before, and it had a human head in it spinning around, and now they're just reusing the asset because they've had to. They can't let any part of their 3D modeling and art go to waste. Yeah, they're doing the gimmick where.
Repairs complete.
Alright, I got this. Get in here and have the time of your life. Now the question becomes, do we overheat? Yes. Do we have a grenade? Yes. So we want to feather our shots somewhat. We'll want to probably run around and collect some of this stuff later. Yeah. Does this for a second feel like a horror game when you are in a giant mech? Although in all fairness, I can also appreciate that in the first game we saw some of these robotic power armor enemies and we fought them and we never got to really play as them. Although we are kind of our own like unique special powered characters anyway, so like, do we really need power armor? And the question here is, does this go on forever, or is there something more to this, or can I possibly destroy myself on accident? Am I supposed to be going anywhere? Like, because it kind of feels like you just aren't going to be able to make any progress. This feels like this is just going to go for forever. I think I'm supposed to have got into this and then maneuvered myself around some different places. Get to that. And then I'm supposed to, I think, walk this way and walk in here and then just move forward. I think this is pretty much a completely scripted scene, and unless I wanted to press Y and jump out of it, which I don't think is the right move. I think you're just kind of stuck. Here we can see maybe the edges of the stadium, or we are maybe in a place where the highway is collapsed. I guess it's the highway, not the stadium. You would almost expect that a area like the stadium would be well suited for a section like this. But see, the problem here is you introduce this and we need to either have Alma completely wreck you in this kind of outfit and just show that it's of absolutely no use against ghosts, or this thing needs to get like just cutscene wise destroyed. Like we are just hitting checkpoint after checkpoint, which that does allow you to much quicker just run through some areas that are fairly repeated stuff. Says hold E to exit the power armor. Who else is still firing at me? Let's just have some fun blowing some stuff up and doing some damage, because this will almost certainly be the only time we'll be able to do this. I mean, I can't say this is bad. This is exactly what you would want to see in a game at like a midway point to have some different experience. Okay. And it's very possible none of those characters dropped anything as far as a collectible at all. And we can see my health is not particularly great, so it would be nice if there's some stuff we can pick up to kind of refill while we're in this area. Also wouldn't be surprised if they had planned for you to potentially jump out of this area a little bit earlier. Yeah, they didn't drop any bullets at all while you were in the machine. But fair enough. If they're gonna give you a walking mech to pilot. Manual door override. So I may just need to actually turn the door open and then we may get back into the machine. Which that works for me. Another piece of... Come on. We just unlocked the award for Historian, which probably means we've collected 2/3 of all of the collectibles. If I was going to be super cautious, I would have parked this closer. You can just get back into the thing. What's interesting here too is you get different visuals. So this could very well be like a very badly animated or just repetitively animated area, and by having you see things in a different way, you wouldn't even recognize that. And we are fighting mech versus mech, although the powered armor in no way is as good as my giant mech armor. Oh no. Feel like I may have just blown up a missile right next to myself. Getting snipered, getting hit by a lot of different things. It's kind of silly to stand backwards, and because if I start walking backwards, I'm probably going to get hit by that too. Yep. Either this device has regenerating health, or it just has a lot of health and we are on the verge of running out. The only other button I know about that this game has is a button to. This is a health piece. I think we can get close enough to pick that up. Nope. So I don't know if the game intends for you to be able to make it this far in the machine, or if it really matters. I don't know if I'm supposed to be able to run and like walk over some enemies. We don't have the time slowdown ability. While in the vehicle, which does seem like a regrettable missing feature, certainly. And I think we're getting prompted once again to say, look, no more of that. See, there's definitely, yeah, I don't think it's gonna let me jump over there and parkour. There's definitely more health down that way if I was willing to jump back down that direction. But I don't think that's really worth it. Honestly, I feel like the fact that we had this sequence just points out... Was that Snake Fist? No, that was our lieutenant. It points out a fact. Here we go, Alma's back now. Yep. Alma's psychic power. Let's bring on the flashlight. Yeah, I feel like even the game knew it couldn't just continuously throw more enemies at us and have us run and gun. And boy, does that screen look blurry. Like, yeah, why does it clear up and then get blurry again? Like, they're intentionally programming it to be blurry so that they can jump scare you, which I feel like is a fairly obvious thing. And we're just gonna end up. So he now is shooting Alma. behind me. Is that what they said? So, yeah, either Alma is going after Griffith, or Griffin, whichever his name is. It's probably Griffin. The only Griffith I know is from the anime Berserk. And she seems to control the big Cthulhu-esque tentacle monster if she isn't
Let's move.
actually that.
Needs backup. Come on.
Yeah. Of course, you once again get to the Stranger Things story where
Come on, Becket. Let's go.
it might very well. Where did she come from? And maybe she just opened a portal to a Cthulhu-esque experience.
Griffin! Tom!
There's no quick time events here. It's just a cutscene. Did she just look at you?
Oh, God! Oh, my God! Griffin!
Oh, I guess your cursor just goes green
What is going on?
with any of your allies, so I guess I can just
We have to move,
not
Becket.
shoot them anyways. I'm pulling the trigger.
It should be just ahead.
Nope, can't really hit her.
I must be losing my mind.
She thinks she's losing her mind while you're staying still the silent protagonist. I guess we are going to get a bit of co-op. And the second you get anywhere away from her, you're going to...
You look like you could use a ride, Lieutenant.
Yep. I think this pretty much leaves us with just these people. You have Morales, you have Keegan, and there's a driver. I'm not sure we even got the driver. And then Stokes. And is the game seriously just going to have us get in the vehicle and then end up at the school? I guess we are. Because I don't see how anything else can happen.
Just get us out of
Unless the
here,
school takes place in the third game and we get a very odd ending.
What the hell is going on here?
Morales is driving.
If I know, but we're stuck in the middle of it.
Keegan and Stokes. And Becket. And the levels are just getting shorter and shorter to the point where it almost makes an argument that I should make a whole nother episode here and just combine two levels. But I don't want to do that because there is a very good chance if you have a 30-minute episode like this, the next episode may very well be 50 minutes, an hour long, and then it'll just turn into an hour and a half long or even longer episode. Alma killed Sergeant Griffith. You were powerless to stop her. Now you and your surviving team members, that's a funny word to misread, are headed for Wade Elementary School to try and prevent Colonel Vanek's men from reaching Snakefist and Genevieve Aristide. Aristide, however you pronounce that. They didn't even say her name enough for me to register it in my mind. She is such a non-character in this story. Which I don't know what you could really have done with her other than combine her with Colonel Vanek, and then she could have been the big bad guy. Because at some point, I guess we would want to fight Colonel Vanek, but I imagine we won't. I imagine Alma will just kill him, or he'll disappear from the story and be completely forgotten. But yeah, I don't know what else you do with her other than you maybe just drag her along, and then you have something like Resident Evil 4 where you have a character that's just constantly cowering in the corner and getting kidnapped. Which I imagine Resident Evil 4 came out before this game, so that would have been fairly copycatish. But it is very weird to get into the APC and go to another location. They could have they very possibly would have thought that that was how they were going to make the entire game, is that every level was going to be very bespoke and separate from every other level, and so you would just get from a deployment point to an extraction point in each level, and it would just still be a linear experience. But that would have been fairly boring and not make a lot of sense. That is how they design most games. That the hospital level, they could have easily rewritten the story and had the hospital level happen at a different point in the story, and it really wouldn't have changed too much. Same is true for the underground levels of the shell of the hospital. Uh, I still suspect we will lose at least 2 more people, but maybe not. It kind of doesn't matter if you kill off the other team members or not, because they don't really have any role in the game, and they could easily be used as characters in DLC if they were planning for more DLC than the one piece that they did make, or they could just hold on to them for a future expansion in like F.E.A.R 3. Once again, that gets to the problem of this being a horror game and it being a military first person shooter. It just does not work as a concept. Like, military first person shooters are always about having military grunt personalities who kind of like each other or give each other a hard time. It is definitely about the thrill of the hunt, where horror is about isolation and being overwhelmed and not being prepared for a scenario. Where, once again, military shooters, you're supposed to be a soldier, you're supposed to be trained and prepared for almost every scenario. The two clash so greatly, it is stupid at day one in the pitch meeting for a game like F.E.A.R for it to have been greenlit. It really is. You often hear that or you at least hear rumors of pitch meetings for video games where somebody is fairly arbitrary and they say, well, like, women won't sell in a video game, or it's gotta have lots of collectibles, things that are sound fairly arbitrary and just like opinions of the one person who happens to be in charge. But I really think if they had just done even 5 minutes of thinking about it, yeah, military shooters and horror doesn't work. That's why when you look at Dead Space, he's not a military guy. The main character, Isaac, in Dead Space, is a mechanic. He doesn't have a gun. He has a welder, a bolt gun that shoots bolts. Certainly, it acts like a gun, but it wasn't originally intended to be that way. Isaac is completely isolated in the first 2 of the Dead Space games, and when they tried to bring it in to being a co-op military shooter in the 3rd game, it was wholly rejected as a bad idea, and nobody liked it. In all fairness, Dead Space 3 also had a lot of terrible microtransactions in it, but it did not work as a co-op military shooter, and it won't ever. It's just a terrible idea. There are 2 games in the F.E.A.R series, easily. There could be F.E.A.R, that is like First Encounter Assault Recon, which I think that's what it stands for. There's a F.E.A.R game that can be that, where it's military people getting into first encounters, shooting things. And then there is a F.E.A.R game where F.E.A.R doesn't stand for anything, and it's just a horror game. And you could easily take the trilogy of F.E.A.R 1 and F.E.A.R 2 and break it into 2 completely separate stories. And you would have 2 better games that you could focus on, and 2 projects, 2 trilogies that Warner Brothers could have had. Whereas, kind of at this point, Warner Brothers doesn't have a lot of product to offer, particularly if you ignore all the Batman products that they're trying to sell, and that does not work out well for them as far as Warner Brothers Interactive division is concerned. Um, but yeah, even if you were going to try and have a military shooter with a horror game, I feel like at a certain point they should have thought of the idea of having you play as young Alma and have her run around the world and see all these monsters, and it just be something that feels like it's in her uh, imagination. And yes, there are soldiers, but they're not replica soldiers or super soldiers. It's just there's a military incursion, and in some levels you play as a military guy taking on the military incursion, who is always like one chapter behind Alma, the girl, who then has to do stealth missions and escape horror missions. And if you split it up very discreetly, and it's like, oh, I'm playing as the little girl, obviously the little girl can't shoot guns, can't defend herself. She's just running around, maybe finding collectible, maybe leaving collectibles for the military person. Uh, but she's seeing monsters. Whereas the military guy, he doesn't see monsters, or at least he doesn't see monsters until right at the end, the third act, or even the final chapter. And at that point, maybe you didn't have the big reveal that there actually were monsters, and the military guy was the guy who was not seeing reality. And then you can have one big monster boss fight at the end. Um, but if you even pull that trick off, you really can't have a trilogy in that case. You would have to make Fear 2 set in a completely different universe with completely different characters. I feel like a series called Fear probably would have worked fairly well with that, had Fear 2 even been the same characters, had it just been Point Man or Becket, but they were in a completely different city and they were dealing with a completely different uh, event. That would work, I think, way better for them. That's certainly what you see with Resident Evil. Resident Evil 1, you're in this creepy house with zombies. Resident Evil 2, you're in the Raccoon City. Resident Evil 3, and some of the games in the middle there, you're still in Raccoon City, but by the time you get to Resident Evil 4, you're in Spain. Resident Evil 5, you're in Africa. Resident Evil 6, you're all over the place in different places, but nowhere where you've been before. Resident Evil 7, you're in uh, like Louisiana or Mississippi, the swamp of the United States somewhere. Um, and even though there is a connecting through line of a bad company in Resident Evil, that's Umbrella, that often gets different names. In Fear, it could be Armorcam. There isn't that much of a connecting force between characters. Sometimes characters come back, but nobody is the main character. It's not just Chris Redfield throughout like the entire Resident Evil series. Anyways, at this point, I feel like I'm more just stretching it and comparing it to better versions of horror games, horror third-person, first-person shooters. There is also an argument, certainly, to be made that this should have been a third-person game, not a first-person, because if it was a third-person, then that opens up them to write a lot more jump scares where something is behind you and you see it crawling up and trying to grab you, which we don't have a lot of zombie-like creatures that try to run up and grab you at all in the game. But also it just doesn't try to put it in the packaging that people would have been familiar with for first-person military shooters. Like, it's really hard to get out of the mindset that I'm playing a game like Halo because I'm playing a first-person shooter. That's pretty much the same feeling I would get in any first-person shooter would be, I'm a military type person. I've got a lot of guns. I'm going to kick butt and chew bubblegum. I don't feel like I'm going to play a horror game in first person, which is a weird statement to make because there definitely have been some first person horror games more recently, but they don't often have guns at that point. So this could just be because Resident Evil 4 set the stage of being a third person shooter. That's where I feel like horror for shooter games should be. But I think that very well may be the case when you see like The Evil Within. That's a third person shooter game. At least I think it's third person by default. You might be able to put a first person mod in it. And at a certain level, I guess that's true for any game. You can put a first person mod in almost any game easily with a little bit of programming by just moving the camera around, where it takes a lot more work to go from first person to third person, because it's very possible that the game only animated the arms of the character and he doesn't really have a head model or body model that's being rendered on screen. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.